All right, everybody. Nick at Chunky Bay Studios. I am glad you guys could join us. I have future children with us. Yes, I'm on here. You look up in the top left corner. I'm still there, the little guy. So we're gonna break this out. These guys have some really, really cool music. I can't wait to talk about your guys' album that dropped in December of last year. Really, really cool. I've been listening to it a whole lot. So
Thank you.
everyone, Future Children, can you give us just a little background about Future Children and how you guys came about?
Well, as we were just saying off the air, Chris and I have known each other for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
several weeks, almost a month now. He so and he was in and he joined. He was in a band. I had a recording studio with another guy, and he was in a band that came up there to record, um, and and we got along very well. We got along with the whole band, and then so we got along very well actually, and so he ended up joining my then band and played with us for a while, and then so then actually what happened? So then after that, Kristen did some solo stuff that I worked on, and then he did this band thing that I kind of worked on, and then there's a period where we had, I don't know, for some reason we didn't fall out or anything. We were just doing others. I don't know. Sometimes that
Life catches up with you.
right, yeah, right. But then all of a sudden, like I was writing some songs and stuff, and then I think I just sent you to them, and I was like,
Yeah,
"What do you think?"
Let's work on them. And
Yeah.
it was kind of, I kind of worked in that period where we hadn't been in contact with more guest guitar driven type stuff like XTC maybe, but with the Beach Boys sensibilities kind of thing. So it was layered.
Yeah,
We
the
kinda,
witch hazel, I checked that
Yeah.
out. Yeah, and that's right. I got that the like layers with a bit of a Beach Boys vibe. That's exactly, and that's how Shawnee's like, check it out. It's kind of like a Beach Boys vibe to
right.
it. So yeah, it's very cool stuff on that one too.
Oh, thank you. We don't talk. To be honest with you, we don't talk about a lot about our past. In so much as like we're like, oh, gosh, to be honest with you, who cares? Because I mean, we're afraid of like, just listen to this music. You don't have to have a whole big story. But
Yeah.
also too, he's too humble probably to mention that he also in the time that we're talking about here, he was playing with Guided by Voices and Doug Gillard and other people because he's a really good musician. So he actually had other people like, using him.
Right, but it's funny because I think we both kind of arrived when we started changing files and thinking about this concept of getting away from the sort of perfunctory four-piece. There's a guitar, there's a bass, there's drums, and we kind of were like, I had been fronting some bands and things. I was just kind of not interested in doing that anymore. I was just interested in just the songwriting and the recording, and kind of layering things, and then working on, okay, how do we do this live at some point? Who cares?
Yeah.
It was more, let's just finish these songs because, we don't want to go and play golf.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think too that we both sort of were arrived simultaneously without necessarily planning to in more synth-based kind of stuff anyway.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like, oh, hey, you're kind of like getting into the synth thing more too. Oh, so that was.
And even though both of us sort of play guitar, I don't think either of us consider ourselves guitarists. It's an instrument for writing songs. I think we're both very song-oriented.
No, of course that doesn't mean we won't have drones for 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, right.
with nary a chord change.
Right.
And just listening, the new album they have, new release is Crying of Lot 49. Now, how did you guys come up with it? Because it is, as you guys put it, soundtrack to the book from the 1960s.
Right.
How did you guys come up with that? Because it's great. I mean, I've never read the book, and after hearing it and listening to it several times, I'm actually going to get the book for my Kindle now just to read it.
If you're going to get attention, it's the one to start with, and listen, only for, if no other reason, the brevity of it.
Right.
It's a good, shortish read to dip your toes in. And then, yeah, Kevin, you can kind of explain.
And it's enjoyable, and it has a bunch of. It's actually somewhat funny.
Oh yeah.
And it's also very Californian, which again, I love that kind of stuff.
You could kind of see maybe where Steely Dan, in a way, pulls in the weird California
Absolutely.
into their music through him.
Yeah, Pinchin' is kind of like a dry run for the Steely Dan vibe, if you will.
All right.
But I'll tell you how we did it was this is just one of these sort of modern things. The way stuff works now is like, there was this label. I saw them on Twitter. The label's name was Bibliotapes, and they were like, they had just started. I think when I contacted, they had done like 2 releases, but they were basically like, we're doing soundtracks to books. And I was like, I want in on that.
That's yeah, that's right
Like,
there.
the minute I heard it, I was like, I mean, we were literally both English majors. I mean, English minor, whatever you want. But we both come from a literary background of college. And so it was like, it couldn't have been more. I mean, we considered the things we were doing already to be like soundtracks to ideas that we had.
Right.
So the thought of like literally using a book was just, I mean, it couldn't have been more in our wheelhouse. So it was basically like, I fired off a thing to the guy, I sent him a DM immediately, like, can we do this? And here's the book. I don't know, did you suggest the book first though?
I think we almost
Just
came up
sort
with
of
some
thought of
ideas.
it,
And we
yeah.
both kind of really thought that was the one.
Yeah, that was the one. So it just happened real quick, but it's all down to this Scottish, they're from Scotland, label Bibliotapes. I mean, they had the idea of doing it, and we were just like, oh, we got to get on that.
That actually sounds very, very interesting. Now, just to rewind a tad, you guys weren't worried about performing really what you're doing. Now, I don't want to perform anymore either. It's part of it's my body just can't handle being on a stage anymore. But as I've gotten older, it's kind of like I just kind of want to step away. It's not about getting out on the stage. I want to focus more on the inner workings of it. You think that happens to a lot of musicians as we get the experience and years built up and say hitting the road? Do you think that just becomes more of like a norm as we mature as musicians?
I mean, I gotta be really, really honest. I never was a huge fan of touring. Now, I love playing music. Like when you get up and you start playing, and there is, this is rare, the connection with the audience, that's great. All the peripheral things almost cancels that out to a certain degree. Now, I am looking forward to touring some here, depending on how everything works out. Because I think that there's a lot of, you and I would have a lot of fun on the road.
Yeah.
And to me, like, it's not just about lugging amps and things
Right.
at that point. There's other distractions. At this point, frankly, we don't have to worry about, it's not like you have to play a 15-date leg or anything. It's 2-3 shows. So, I think it would be more like a little bit of a vacation in a way.
Yeah, I think that we definitely didn't consider playing live, but we also, it basically just wasn't a consideration at all. And so now we're kind of like, we've kind of gone back to the thing like, oh, well, it might be fun because we have there was zero thought of doing it.
Right.
It almost was like,
There's no
oh,
expectation.
yeah, there's zero expectation. And we've each played, especially, I mean, like I said, he toured with, people who are real tourists in America. And we played, with Mitch Hansel, we played some big gigs and big things. And like, I don't think we, except for literally, I can think of like 2 times, enjoyed it all that much.
Yeah, there's the meeting some of the other bands.
Yeah, that was cool.
That's cool.
Like, we played with the Flaming Lips once in a club.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it was awesome because, I ended up talking with their guitar player at the time who I loved, Ronald Jones.
Oh, right.
And then we go to a festival that we played at,
Yeah.
and there's Ronald Jones. I get to meet and talk with him again. It's like, that is absolutely the best
That's
part.
great.
Yeah.
Bands breaking down in Princeton, New Jersey. That's not
That's
so
great.
and that's happened.
And also musicians, we're not saying, we're just saying, oh yeah, we're now going to be touring again. But we're also like, we totally know what you're talking about. It's also too, Chris and I, we have personalities that work together, and musicians are otherwise moody fuckers. So it's like, let's be honest. Pardon my language. I hope that's in the middle of the day here, but being around moody people is not the greatest time.
It's you look at how many bands that don't last or don't work well together. Like, I didn't know Cracker. I love those guys. I didn't know 2 of the original members were still together in the band after all these years. I was like, holy shit. I was like, original from back then, there's original members still.
Right. Right.
You know, and not just one carrying it on. It's so yeah, it's as musicians, different egos can get in the way. You know, so yeah, that's that. You
But it's
guys,
also interesting too, though. Have you noticed? It seems to me that like also like a lot of bands are kind of bands that are older than us too. People who are older than us are kind of like getting back together to do stuff live again, which is it almost feels like there is a like coming around where you're
hmm
like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I'm too blah blah blah, and then you're kind of like, I'm now old enough where I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. It's like, you know, it's like because I see bands like the Feelies. I mean, they're in their 60s, and they're happily the same group that they're the original group. You know what I mean? But they just got back together and started playing more, and you're like, well, good for you. Why not? Do what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I've just hit a point from accidents, and I was too hard on my body. It's like, yep, no. It's even DJing. Like I had to give up electric. I play only flamenco now. So,
Right.
but I mean, it's just you get tore up. Guitar straps hurt. You know,
Sure. I feel it. No. No,
lugging
all
around a 5150 for 5 years in the right hand. You know, but I was carrying that 3 4 times, sometimes five a week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was such an idiot that I took a super reverb with 410s on the road. And it's
Oh.
like, first of all, if you know anything about me, you're like, why do you even own that? I'm like, I could have got away with a
Something
champ.
about this
Yeah, I
band.
could have got away with a Princeton.
Yep.
Why am I carrying a 410 amp or speakers amp rather? So yeah, we totally understand you on that.
Yeah, I went from full stack to half stack, then into a 1 by 12.
That's great.
So yeah,
Honestly though, that is literally the worst part. Is all the schlepping of the
Well,
amps.
and you know, then you're at the club, right? And then it's like you're looking at your stuff in the back line, and you're like, you could go through these mental maneuvers. My God, I got to move this and that as soon as they're done, and that's gonna go there, and then I got to set up my effects loop, and you know, it's like,
Well, and also I was the guy like, you remember how after the show, like hopefully everyone's glad handling you and stuff, and like, oh hey, let me buy you a drink, let me talk. Like, and my whole time I'm like, I can't, I gotta get, because I'm so paranoid about getting our stuff and making sure the stuff goes where it is. So I'm like, I never was like, people would always be at the bar drinking. I'd come like half an hour later after I finally made sure that I had all the stuff that I thought, and then we still lost stuff. And you're just like, God damn it.
yeah,
So it almost was just like, get some roadies if you're gonna go out, and or forget it. Quite frankly, it's like schlepping stuff around is no fun.
one of drummers in one of my old bands had a huge rack system. So, and you got 15 minutes to tear up and tear down. It was everybody in the band was putting his drum set together. So yeah, I was one of those that I would hoard around the gear, and then I can talk good on here. You get me face to face, I shut down. You get me on stage, if I don't have a guitar or turntables in front of me, I start sweating and freaking out. So yeah, I've
Well,
always
I would say that to people too. It's like, I don't know why people expect artists to be good at anything else. It's like, dude, we're artists because we're so bad at life. Listen, look at the space we're in. This is my basement.
yeah.
Okay? Like we're literally underground, not figuratively, literally. So it's like, listen, we're people who do things in the subterranean. Don't expect us to be good at all any normal stuff. Come on.
I've been in worse. I was literally for a time crammed in the little closet in a mud room with my computer, and my computer was my monitor stand and everything else.
But that's great though, because that's also what I love. It's like you also have to do it. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You're gonna find a way you're gonna still create, right?
Yeah,
So
I think it's a survival instinct for us, really. So
absolutely.
now I
And I'm
got
not
to.
trying to be pretentious about like us creating artists, but I'm just saying like that's what our malfunction is.
Now, I know me and Sean have this horrible disorder. You guys have gas. And for people who don't know, gear acquisition syndrome, or if you're just a guitarist, guitar acquisition syndrome. Now, how bad do you guys suffer from that?
Well, I tell you what, though, I want to publicly tip my cap to Sean because he's the dude he might even be slightly to blame for my gas. I mean, 'cause that dude, like, I'll never forget, like, getting to know him, and then at the time, he was married to this woman at the time but he let me go to his house once, and he had more guitars and the most amazing guitars you've ever seen in your life. I mean, honest to God. Unfortunately, they went with her in a divorce, but I mean, so from the get-go, he had the most amazing stuff. I mean, he still has amazing stuff. I go over to his house and it's like, oh, what's this, John? He's like, oh yeah, I have this one, and you're like, what? You have this? He goes, yeah, I just found it. It was hanging underneath the bed, tucked under the bed. He literally had like a drumulator that we ended up trading him for. It was like underneath the bed. Like you're like, and it literally had a box, the whole box and everything. It wasn't like just a loose drumulator. You're like, holy crap! And so anyway, Sean is the king of all that stuff. I mean, I feel like I'm totally was his disciple in that stuff.
I asked him to adopt me.
I think at this point, though, you particularly are rotating things out as you bring things in.
Finally. It's funny. It actually has just reached that point. I mean, I don't mean to. I mean, we definitely have it. I'm not trying to, like make you a liar or anything, because we've absolutely had. But it is gotten to the point finally where I'm like, okay, some of this stuff I just got to get rid of some stuff. It just doesn't get played enough.
Well, it's a workflow thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's very true.
It's if you're setting something up to record or mix or something, you don't have to go through and patch in 600 things. You want something ready to go. And if you work that kind of pile of wonderful gear down, some choice, pieces of the chain, it tends to work better.
Well, I'm noticing, like, it was such a part of me, though, that it's only the last few months where I'm, like, looking at compressors, and then I went, I actually don't need any compressors. I have enough. Literally, though, I have a couple opticals. I got two or three different kind of 1176s. I've got a purple one. I've got a black audio one. I've got two different distressors. I've got a distressor. I mean, anyway, the point is, I don't need any more. I have a pair of DBX 160s. And it was finally dawned on me, it was like, stop looking at compressors. You don't need any compressors. And it sounds obvious, but you know what I mean. It's like, you're just trained. So you're just like, oh, look at that. Well, I don't know. Oh, compressor, not a bad price, blah, blah, blah.
But there's nothing as intoxicating as potential, right?
No, it is.
Yeah.
If I just buy this, I can do.
Then it'll come together.
Yeah.
But I'm the most guilty person of that of anyone. There's never been anyone more guilty of that than me. Period. I mean, and also too, if you see the studio now, he knows I've rearranged this thing like 17 times. I mean, honestly, it's just, I don't know. It's bad. It's bad. It's fun to talk about it. It is fun to talk about with other people who have it. But I am finally, I think, maturing enough to realize, dude, you've got it. Just start working on mixes, for Christ's sake.
That's me. I have a huge thing with, like, I love acid music, 303s, 808s, 909s. I had all kinds of Volcas and stuff, and I was like, I'm just getting something else and freeing up space. So I went out and dropped almost $2,000 on an Integra 7 because it's got all the original 808s and 303s and everything, and so I ended up jumping on that. But yeah, I've kind of I started looking around. I was like, oh my god, I don't even use half of this stuff now because it's three of the same thing.
And it's like, you kind of have that self-awareness eventually to go, Jesus Christ, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, I've got a 1980s synth that, kids would be killing for, or some kid would be like, oh my god, it's the only poly I could possibly have. And you're like, this is sitting here with a cloth over it. I haven't touched it in 3 years.
But, you acquired that stuff. Not that but I'm just saying, from an economic standpoint, you acquired that stuff cheap.
Really? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is also
a lot of time. Not like Sean though. Sean's got some really.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, he's got like a C60 Yamaha C60 or something, and you're like, how did you even get that? And he's like, oh yeah, I got it from some guy who was in the country band and didn't want it anymore, and I paid $100 for it.
Wow.
Like his ARP 2600 with the original speakers
Yeah.
still in it
Oh
that
yeah.
work. Oh my gosh! I was like, you sent me a picture. I was like, is that a holy grail? Really?
It really is. And hey, this might offend some people, but I don't know if Sean said it. I didn't get all the way through the interview yet, but the Behringer 2600 I brought over and we compared it to his, and it was closer than it has any right to be.
Yeah, and
I
that's
I paid $600 for the Behringer.
yeah. And when
Sean
I
went out and
first
bought
interviewed,
one though. He bought one though because it's perfect. Because I told him, I was like, look, if you ever go on the road again, you ain't taking that ARP with you, are you? Right.
no, oh hell no.
Take the Behringer, and you're gonna get like 99% of the ARP sound, and you're never gonna worry about it after the gig.
It's funny too because I do think for all the we try to look for good gear to acquire. Neither of us are snobby about using any clones. I mean, to me, there is a fundamental availability. You know, my God, you can literally buy anything that you want now in all sorts of derivatives and packaging. And I think from a creative standpoint, that's really freeing. And then, of course, it also gets you to the point where you have too much gear. But neither of us are.
No.
I mean, Behringer's just fine.
Yeah, and that's what the first time I interviewed Sean, and I actually did it on camera to clip it out for people because they always knock it out. I was like, all right, you got the originals. How do you think these compare? And he's like, oh, I got the Behringers too. He's like, we'll put them side by side. You can't tell the difference.
No, he does.
Yeah.
He's got them all. Like, I don't have them all. He's got them all.
Yeah,
And
because
I'll tell you another thing too. He and I did. We did these comparisons. So people want to say that he and I are nuts, but between us, we've got 60 years of experience in this. The Pro One Behringer ripoff sounds exactly like the Pro One. He has a Pro One. It's astonishingly good, and it's like less than $200 or less. It's ridiculous. It sounds just like a Pro One. I know people don't want to believe it because they got their money invested. They've got their these beliefs and stuff. And listen, I just traded again. Sean had 2 Juno 60s, so I ended up trading them for one. And the Juno 60 is amazing, and I mean it's you sit there and you go, oh my God, that's a poly. I mean, talk about it, but it's like, you know how much those fucking things go for now?
Oh
People
God,
are charging over $3,000 for them.
yeah.
That's lunacy.
And that was before all the microchip shortage and all the other crap since have gone.
I go there and look on Reverb, and I look at a couple things we have, like the Juno 60 and stuff, and the price just keeps going up, and I'm like, but I'm not going to sell it. But I'm just like, this is a bubble to me. I mean, there's no way it's not going to burst, right? It's like a stock market or real estate market. It's like, what are you going to pay $7,000 for a Juno?
Well, but that's the thing. There's so many other options, and people that are creative can use anything. I mean, honestly, if you put it through a couple filters, if you put a nice compressor on it,
right.
Who can actually say, well, that's not a 60?
Right.
What are you doing?
No, that's very true.
You used a clone.
That's very true. No, it's funny that I think if anything, I put pressure on myself with that kind of crap. I'm the one who's like, well, I'll know. Come on.
Yeah, and you know what? Honest to goodness, I've sat down with gear like that and samplers, and I learned something very good with the Integra 7 from I turned it on. I was sitting there testing the sounds. I looked at my wife. I said, I got to go practice guitar. This thing is playing flamenco guitar better than me right now. I was like, holy crap, this is a synthesizer. I was like, honey, I got to go play my guitar. I'll be back later. So yeah,
we still have a hardware sampler in here, and it's an old Oberheim one. And the reason I have it is because it plays like 5 different formats. It plays like the sequential format and like the Mirage disc. But anyway, like I have so many discs, and we got lucky. Like I got a bunch of Yes discs from their 90210 period because they were using the emulator too, and I've got like crisp. But anyway, the point being is like that stuff still sounds amazing. Like a sampler stuff from like the 80s. That stuff sounds great. I've got a one disc that's a disc of just pizzicato bass playing on a stand-up. It's so good sounding. I go, my God, how does this sound this good? It sounds like there's a bass player in the room with me. And that's like 1987.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think the sampler. I'm of the thing of like you can talk about your bits and your bytes and your sample rates, this and that. I'm like, I don't know, dude. They had these hardware samplers, and they did it in 1987, and it sounds great to me.
Yeah, I do think some people get caught up too bad in how many bits, how many kilohertz, this and this. It's like, I have a modern collection. I don't have nice vintage stuff because I've got a cheaper budget with 4 kids.
Right? Oh, no,
but
good.
but I mean, it's just what does it matter? What hurts and everything else? Like, when you're working with studio monitors, it's different. You got to have your frequency. But come on, it sounds good. Leave it at that.
I
you
mean,
know.
that's that thing that Joe Meek said, which is the English producer from the '60s. If it sounds good, it is good. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the truest thing you'll ever have.
So
I mean, like we've got shit that is on like a 4-track that we transfer over. It's like there's nothing to change there. It sounds amazing.
yeah, and I think that's the kind of vintage thing is making a comeback now. I was just reading an article on a girl. She's 26 now, and she played guitar, and she's like, solid states are going to be gone in 20 years because nobody's going to work on them. This girl's been repairing stuff from the 30s and rebuilding it at an amp shop, and she opened her own and doing it, and she's like, solid states have nothing on the actual vintage tube amps. So I think there's a bit of
jazz chorus when I started playing guitar, the Roland jazz chorus, solid state. I know a lot of English bands played that, and I mean, I have a Fender Twin and an old carved out box that is a tube single speaker. There's something weird. I mean, and there's players that like that Roland jazz chorus. If something falls flat out front, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's presence or just how much air it's moving.
I think it's the air. Sometimes, for some reason, those tube amps push that damn air. Push that speaker, and like I know exactly what you mean. Like out front, it just dies in a solid state.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if they don't have enough power to actually push the cone to get it out there, or I got no idea. But yeah, it's kind of a flat sound, I guess. It is.
Push pull in the tube circuitry that goes on, right? So it is some sort of lag, and depending on how your amp is biased in the tube state, you can tweak that. But it's weird because there are people that still like to play that jazz chorus thing.
True.
I
think that's more
liked
because it's like, let's be honest, like look at the Junos and stuff. It's like the part is that Roland's chorus sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's a good.
Then that's basically the Roland chorus is the sound of what everyone thinks is the best chorus. Right. I think they like the sound of that, and they don't really worry about the amp as much because they're like, and also too when you think about people like The Cure or Andy Summers or some like guys like that playing that. They almost want that. It's more about the chorus, I think, than the actual pushing the beat. Though I saw The Cure once and they had Marshall stacks too, so.
yeah. Those Marshalls can really, really draw. Like I've had. I had so many amps over the years. So like I had I had an original 5150 with two 1960 cabs. I had one of the first PV Deuces ever, so yeah, I've had the collection of solid state and tube, and yeah, there's just nothing that competes with analog when you're going for an authentic sound. Now
I agree. And also just I can't get over how we have a Silvertone, and I've had people offer me money for that thing, good money for it, and the thought is like, man, you got this basically out of a catalog back in the '60s.
Sears.
Yeah, Sears. It's one, but it sounds. You're sitting there going, what? How does this sound this good? Yeah. It doesn't make an ounce of sense.
Yeah, and they went from being Sears catalog to, hey, we really, they're a big deal from the Sears catalog back in the day. So.
And, I mean, even some guitars. I've got a guitar that's made of basically, laminated. Laminated. It's basically not even real wood. But it's but it sounds cool as hell. It's like, sometimes it's the same way with guitars as sometimes as I feel about sample rates. It's like, yeah, rosewood this, maple this, that, 96K, whatever. I'm like,
it sounds good.
Yeah, there's this cheap '60s guitar being played through an amp in the case, and it sounds better than what you're telling me costs $3,000.
Yeah, and it's, I actually myself, I stopped dropping big money on guitars for that reason. I had custom Jackson Kellys, and then I had the Japanese ones, and it was like, okay, set neck, bolt on, eh.
Yeah.
But I don't have a guitar I bought in the past 15 years that I paid more than like 900 for, including my handmade flamenco guitars. It's like I don't
Right.
need
Right.
like I got ones, I got Cremonas and Cordobas, and it's like those sound perfectly fine than a lot of the others I've played. So yeah, and
That's like how the synths are getting now. It's the same thing happening with guitars where the prices, they just got so good at making actual good guitars at really cheap prices. I mean, they figured it out.
yeah.
They're kind of getting that with the synths now.
Well, I mean that's like I love my Iridium and Summit, and you look at like how much there was one granular synth out for a while, hardware granular synth. I've really gotten into that,
Right.
but shit was beyond expensive. You know, but the Iridium is oh god, it went up $400 since I got mine. But you got like granular synthesis, wave, 3D wave, the typical standard wavetable. I mean, all of that, and it's like $2,200. It's like, dear God, 5 years ago, each one of those would have been $2,000, $3,000 easy, you know.
Right.
And then you get something like the Hydrasynth. I don't know if you guys have ever used a Hydrasynth or seen one.
No, I've seen them. I've never used one though.
They
It
are
looks cool.
Oh, they are. They're amazing. All the waveforms and stuff. And you wouldn't think it's an $800 synthesizer for the rack mount or like 1,100 for the keyboard. You wouldn't think a synthesizer in that price range could pump
I've
out.
heard, that's what I've heard. I've heard that. Another, what's the other one that? There's a poly that somebody makes. It might even be a virtual analog, but they're like, you can't believe that this is under $1,000.
Korg made a couple wavetable synths.
Well, yeah, we have the rack one of the what's it called, Wave Station. Remember the Wave Station from the early '90s or?
They still
late
make
80s?
it. They still make the Wave Station. Yep, it's still one of their top sellers. They are released a Wave Station Black, or is it a Wave Station Noir? I can't remember, but they got one special one. They just announced they're stopping making it, so it's a collector now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
How did you guys get started in music? And now it's a thing, like independently, how did each of you get started?
I just decided, like, it's funny too because I think, again, we have a lot in common. We should be in a band.
Start a new one.
We'll
after
start a
this.
new one tomorrow.
One that's successful.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this time,
You're missing that.
that's
part.
the part. I knew it.
Success.
Success. But we were both. It's interesting because we were both actually high school athletes and college athletes. But I think that we both were kind of simultaneously, not at the, but at the same time in our lives, we both were kind of like, yeah, we're not into this athletics anymore. And I had always been into music, and basically I just was like I didn't pick up an instrument until I was like 21 years old.
Oh,
I found
really?
a guitar, oh yeah, I found a shitty guitar in a Goodwill for literally like $25, and I just remember I learned an E and I learned a D, and I learned an A7 because I thought an A was one finger too many, and basically I just would get some books and I listened to Velvet Underground basically because they're real chords like that, and I just basically from that point forward I just was like, well, that's what I'm gonna do. So I mean, it sounds silly, but it was that kind of like, you know how, remember when you were young, you were just like decide things, and then, like now, of course, you'd be like, well, there's 1,000 reasons we can't do that. But back then, I was so young and stubborn, I was just like, well, this is what I'm doing. And it was just like, so I'm going to do it. And that was it.
I mean, I remember I took classical piano early.
Oh, so did I. I took classical piano until I was about 10.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we had piano backgrounds, and
But I forgot most of it by then.
well, that's kind of the thing too with when you go to write music, you want to forget that. I mean, unless you're doing, modern classical compositions, string quartets, things. If you're going to write, pop music, or for lack of a better word, I mean, you really need to unlearn some of that.
Well, I had forgotten. I literally had forgotten. We had moved away, and those piano lessons might as well have never happened for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't come to the guitar until I was like 19.
Yeah.
And it was literally one of those things where it was like, I'm not doing sports
Yeah.
any longer,
Yeah.
and I want to do this. You know, there's bands, of course, that inspire you. And then, you know, the Velvet Underground thing is kind of appropriate because there was the quote that, yeah, you know, they didn't sell a lot of records,
Right.
but they probably, you know, 100,000 bands, you know, give or take, kind of came out of like just listening to them.
Yeah.
Maybe not saying, well, I can do that exactly, but
If they can do it.
maybe I can do it, and maybe it gets done wrong,
Yeah.
and it becomes something else, and you know, I don't know. I mean, I think that a lot of that sort of primitive
Yeah.
music is interpreted that way, right? So
Yeah. And neither of us were like heavy metal kids as growing up. So we didn't
totally
really
missed
we didn't-
that
Yeah,
phase,
we weren't
yeah.
like we didn't, neither. It's ironic because again we didn't know each other this time, but neither one of us picked up the guitar to be like, let's shred.
Right.
Like we're immediately picking up the guitar and being like, let's write songs.
No, the first guitar guys that I kind of looked up to were like Roger McGuinn from the Byrds and Johnny Marr and Smiths.
Johnny Moore, definitely.
You know,
So he's actually really, really good and really complicated, which
yeah,
I found
right.
out. Which
Later.
I found out depressed the shit out of me for a while.
and like a lot of those shoegaze guitarists sort of use the guitar as an instrument of just sort of
My Bloody
a
Valentine.
washing of sounds,
Yeah.
not necessarily singular notes.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
I remember hearing that My Bloody Valentine isn't anything on a cassette because those were days. And I just remember going, I have no idea what this is. This is insane.
Right.
I want to do it. And it was just like, you remember
How
when
did
you
he
were young?
do it?
How did he do it?
How did he do it?
But I just remember the same thing was like hearing the Smiths the first time and just like, holy crap. Like, it was just like, I have to know more about that. I have to know more about how this guy plays this guitar. And My Bloody Valentine was totally like, I don't even know what I'm hearing. I mean, I was just like, what is this? People forget that, you know, everyone's in the shoegaze now. Everyone's into My Bloody Valentine now. But I'm like, listen, man, when you listen to that in 1988, 89, there was nothing else like that. So when I heard it, it was like mind blown.
I mean, the closest thing was maybe the Cocteau Twins.
Yeah, which I liked, but again, they had like a drum machine, and they kind of had her singing. It was like, My Bloody Valentine, Soft as Snow. I remember listening to that in the car, like, and I immediately said to the dude, rewind that. I'm like, what is this? Because it's just these pitched, and you're just like,
Yeah.
it's funny. That's one thing about being old. I try and tell them, like, you guys have all this music available to you now. I'm like, when we heard this shit, it was insane.
Well, and you have a way to mine and harvest it now. Like, you had to go to a record store or someone,
or know
someone's
somebody.
cooler older sister
Or
who
brother,
was at
right?
school out east made you a tape.
Totally. Remember made you a mixtape, and you're like, oh my god, what is this? I mean, I remember going to college and it was a kid on my floor, and it was like meeting this kid on my floor, and he's like, here's the Smiths, here's R.E.M., here's Jesus and Mary Chain. When I heard the Jesus and Mary Chain, I was like, I think your tape's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even I honest to God, again, people laugh now, but it's like, in 1986 or 7, whatever, that shit was insane sounding. Insane sounding. So when you hear, it's like, I just remember, that's all the stuff that I remember when I think about, you know, when I first got started, was just like, honest to God, having my mind blown up like a monthly basis with like, you know, it was just band after band after band. Cocteau Twins too, they were huge for me. I mean, you know, that was what, you know, that was a time when like, there was not a time when I wasn't playing music. Because I had Walkmans, I had boom boxes. Even at school, I even had the turntable I brought. I never forget my father unpacking my records into my dorm, like records, like crates of records. And it's like, so at that point was when music became essentially all-encompassing to me. I was never not listening to music. Period.
Yeah, I lived right next to a college, so even if you didn't want to hear the radio, you heard it through your speakers. All right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that I also like got to know people who like ran or like had radio shows on the college radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing is also, again, you hear, you know, back then especially, college radio was very, you know, big, like not big, what's the word? Prevalent, I guess.
Hip.
Yeah, it's just like, so you would just hear that. I started, like, I was able to DJ. Some people were like, hey man, I actually can't make my show like
Well,
Sunday like you do. Like,
well,
yes.
a lot of those indie bands from the '90s, all of those guys were collegiate DJs. Like
Right.
Guys at Pavement, guys at
Right.
Tango, all those guys were
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
college DJs.
Yeah.
That's where that is probably the richest mining source that you could get then.
I totally agree.
Pre-internet.
Well, and also especially back in those days too, is like I remember listening to tons of R&B. We were just talking about Prince earlier. Listening to tons of R&B. I remember when rap started, hip hop started to come out, and on college radio stations there'd be the Industrial Guys show, followed by, you know what I mean? But I was I listened to all that crap. I listened to all that crap, and it would be and you go again when I would get to hang out at the radio station, I would just be pulling this sounds bad now. I'm going to actually make myself be that. But I remember literally I pulled out a Red Hot Chili Peppers and I pulled out a Smiths. And it's at that time I was this is all good to me. Now, in retrospect, I realized Red Hot Chili Peppers were actually not what I wanted. But at that time you were so open. Well, yeah, and I also pulled government issues because I was hardcore someone interested in me too. And it was just, it's such a formative thing because you feel like you're a big mound of clay then. And it's just all these things.
You kind of assume too that these people that are kind of cluing you in, are cooler than you.
Absolutely,
a little bit,
absolutely.
And they're totally. You're kind of also not that you're sort of chasing their tail or whatever, but you're sort of man, I need to get to a level.
I need to get him. Yeah, exactly.
I need to get him.
Absolutely, and those are still obviously, as we're easily recalling them. Those are big memories. Those are big. That was very formative stuff. Absolutely.
That's really cool. Now we get into the big ones. How does your guys' writing process work? Because you guys do it as a team. You guys obviously work well together. So how does the writing process work for you guys?
It depends. It doesn't. It's not one way actually.
I mean, both of us. This is the central studio here. There's a lot of really good equipment. I've got some stuff at my house up in the attic that I can do some recording on. I mean, I'd say the lion's share of the stuff that we've been releasing are really just things that Kevin kind of had laying around and kind of bounced tracks back and forth. There's some things that I've, on Grind a Lot 49, maybe I'll start something and send it down.
Same.
And then it becomes.
And occasionally we'll talk. Occasionally too, we'll talk I know we've done a thing where let's do a song like this.
Yeah,
and basically that means Chris does it because I'm not very good.
We will come up with frameworks. We should do a song, in the vein of thinking early Steely Dan, but with some kind of R&B thing.
Yeah, or we should. We'll be I think it was a chorus of a Michael Jackson song. It was God damn, that chorus is so sweet.
Right.
We should write something like that. And of course, it doesn't sound anything like that.
No, but again, the important thing is with that process, even the idea that getting it wrong is still some sort of outcome. Again, if it sounds good, it is good.
Right.
You can't just be oh, I used the Michael Jackson song as blueprint, so it's got to be good.
Right.
It still has got to sound good, but we do that a lot. I'm thinking, along the lines of, some sort of Stockhausen using concrete here or something.
I've always said that too. It's because we're music kind of nerds too. We were just talking about how we were watching Get Back and stuff, and how the Beatles will write a song or Lennon or McCartney will write a song. And it's about this or whatever, and it's 90% of what people would be stunned by what we were thinking when we started this song.
Oh, right.
Because it doesn't sound to any normal objective human being. It sounds nothing like what I would say that this song is actually inspired by this. They'd be like, what?
Right.
But that's kind of that's the one thing I've taken the longest thing to recognize but embrace, which is I used to think it was a fault that I couldn't make songs sound the way I thought they should sound. And it took me the longest time to realize, actually that's the only thing that's interesting about me. It's there's only one me who writes songs like this. And in this instance, there's only one us, of course.
Yeah.
And it's that's hard to come to grips with. You realize you just basically, you think to yourself as a musician, especially, you're always I'm just not as good as this guy or that guy. This band is amazing. why can't I be good as that? And then you realize, oh shit, no, what's good is being you. That's the only thing that's interesting. Like, that's why I think we got lucky in the sense that we never did learning solos or learning how to shred. Because you end up stuck in that, I think, I would argue.
I mean, I think that path is less conducive to songwriting in general. I mean, and again, it's totally cool if people have done that.
Yeah.
And maybe they've made that turn back in.
Right.
But sort of the virtuoso musician side, you end up in more of an emulation mode than
Great.
discovery.
It's like it's so funny because there's that thing about the cage theory, and I'm like, well, is that accurate? It's like a cage.
Well, yeah.
Cages you up. And again, this is partly like, celebrating how greatly ignorant I am. I mean, I'm not usually.
Well, that's important.
I'm not usually.
That's why we set this up.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, my flamenco mentor is actually Chris Weiss, who is the lead guitarist for Attica, who toured around with Fear Factory and everything else. He quit. He's like, I love playing it. He goes, but I got tired of playing and writing stupid music. And he's like, stupid in the sense, you're always doing the same thing over and over. Fast, these ripping solos, chugs, that's it. He goes, so I taught myself jazz, and I started learning flamenco, and then he taught me flamenco, and he shreds. He does shows on our stream every once in a while still. That guy can play like no tomorrow and shred, but he'd rather sit there and do some good jazz and mellow, or me and him can sit around and roll one and play some flamenco. And I mean, so yeah, I do believe you guys are correct, because even this is what this guy did for a living, and he even said, you're trapped. You're the same solos, the same tempos, the same chord progressions, and that's all you do over and over. So yeah, getting stuck in that metal, yeah.
Yeah, I think that people wouldn't even realize, I don't think people would realize how much, like, for instance, I listen to a shit ton of jazz. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think, sometimes we talk about chords and stuff, but I'm always, like, I'm watching jazz stuff on YouTube about chords. Like, but because I'm such a moron, like, even that stuff will be dumbed down into like, I'll have 1 6 chord that I learned off a jazz thing on YouTube, but I'm gonna play it on like some synthesizer and with a bunch of shit going on, and I'll just be like, that'll be 1 chord. Be like, that song actually is just that chord. Yeah. So it's like I learned stuff, but I understand that. It's like it feels like if you're a musician who really cares about, like, there's not one thing that you want. You don't want one thing. It's boring. I think the other thing too that is infinitely part of our, inspiration is not being bored.
Well, there's those pits that you can fall into. I mean, I'm sure you and I could get on the piano and try and go, oh, this sounds like the Beach Boys. Right? And then the first instinct that needs to happen is, let's make it not sound like the Beach Boys.
Yep.
Right? Okay, there's these chords that maybe we're showing some connectivity to, but let's stack, things that sort of bias it in a different direction.
Yeah.
Right? Because doing anodyne versions of the Beach Boys or Steely Dan or Kraftwerk or something, I mean, that's just going to end up exactly like that.
And it's funny too, because I don't think this sets us up for success. I mean, I really don't. I mean, people want to hear things that sound like Steely Dan, the Beach Boys. They want to. When people get excited about things, I'm always struck, because it's like, I go listen to it, I'm like, well, that's a complete rip of blank. But people like that. So, like, and I don't mean, this again, not patting ourselves on the back, but it's like, we're just not interested. We're just not interested in being. We could give. Listen, if we wanted to, we could have kept. We could still be giving people the songs that we did back in the '90s, which got us signed to record labels and blah blah blah. But it's like, nothing would be more gross to me, like, than I just wouldn't be interested.
You know where that ends. It's like, at some point,
Luna.
Yes.
Well, see, and that's the thing, man. I mean, like, young, I could never understand. You hear these big bands, they break out, they're done. They don't want to do it anymore. Never could understand that until, I guess my early, maybe mid-30s, and I was like, you get tired of doing that exact same thing. It's like, I don't want, and that's why it's like, it was like a light bulb. It's like, that's why they always stopped doing it. They wanted to do more than just their name's sake.
Like we mentioned again, though, they're like the victim of that cage of also like, what is, like, their success, their money, and all that stuff? It's like, in a weird way, that's another thing too. It's like, at no point that he and I worry about like what a successful thing is. A successful thing to us is artistic success, which is also very weird and very personal. Whatever we think artistic success means.
We also know that there's really no money out there.
Yeah, there's no.
Yeah.
No, not to be completely,
No.
coy about it. No,
Yeah.
it really isn't, and that's fine.
But and we would again, I don't want us to come across as so like, but it's like we definitely want people to listen to it and enjoy the stuff.
Absolutely.
But to be honest with you, at the end of the day, it's mainly to entertain ourselves.
Right.
Mainly.
If you get into music,
I listen to. I mean, I don't hope this doesn't sound too bad, but like when I do occasionally, like I'll have to listen to something on like the Crying Out 49, for instance, and I'll be like, that fucking sound we got is amazing. And I'll just be like, seriously, I'll just be like that. I don't even remember how I got it, which is the other part that's great too, because I'll be like, oh boy, I don't know if we'll ever be able to recreate that live. But like, I'll just be like, man, that sound is great. I love that. And then there'll be things that I never paid attention to, like on some like a song here where I'm like, Chris, I love the way that line. I love that line. I just love it. And then 8 months later, when I listen to it again, it'll be something else that'll pop at me. And so it's like, well, that's good then. We've done good. I mean, that's, if it entertains me for more than a day, that's pretty damn amazing. I'm basically like a dog.
Squirrel. Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, that's something, I don't know. As an artist, it really makes me feel good when I can actually, because so many of us are self-doubting about our work. We can get that out there. But when I can go back and be like, damn, I did a good job there. Damn, that does sound good. That's kind of like, yeah, we're definitely going to keep going at this, because you get...
But how about this, though? Have you also had this experience where, I bet you have, because I had this experience as well, which is like, on that first listen back, say you haven't heard it in like 8 months or 6 months or whatever, a year, you're like, God damn, that's better than I thought. But if you listen to that fucker 2 more times, you're going to hate it again. Like, it is so happened to me where it's like, that is a fine line between you're like, I'm the world's greatest musician or I make dog shit for a living.
Paralyzing self-doubt.
Yeah, paralyzing
needs to weigh the arrogant,
with the Olympian arrogance. Right. Exactly right. But it's fascinating because it's never like, I also think too, that's why artists is like, don't talk to me about equilibrium. Don't talk to me about moderation of any sort. It's poles, man. It's top or it's bottom. That's all we're about.
You're trying to fight out of the bottom.
Exactly.
And you're trying to sustain the top.
As you're trying to sustain, which actually, if you're lucky, you'll kind of sit in the middle. But you can't pretend like you're going to be moderate. Please. What's the point?
So, what are some of your guys' favorite gear you're using at the current moment?
Well, do you mean like recording?
Wait, we'll divide it up. First, let's do instruments. What's your favorite instruments you're right now? We'll make that divide that up.
I mean, I really like that Moog matriarch that I've got.
Mm-hmm.
It's a patchable, I mean, it's a singular synth, but it's got patch points.
It's beautiful looking.
Oscillator. It's, actually got a pretty good delay.
Good delay.
On it.
Very good delay.
It's kind of it's not a polysynth. It's a
what is it?
Paraphonic.
Yeah.
I guess that's. I mean, you can get up to
just one more of
four notes.
Duophonic? Oh,
Yeah,
4 notes. That's right.
notes.
That's right.
Or you can, use a single mono.
Yeah, for like unison and stuff.
Yeah. And that's really nice. I mean, I think it doesn't sound as gritty or as like where you hear the source.
Well, the micro Moog.
The micro Moog.
See, that's the funny thing too. Is like those old Moogs. I mean, I like the new Moogs too, but the old Moogs are like, they're beasts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're actual animals. Like you turn it on and you're like, holy crap! Like you've got to be. It's hard. You have to contain it.
It's tough.
Like you got to It's not easy to just like hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to play a rhythm here, or I mean a bass line rather. Like just don't be an insane asylum. But on the other hand, you're like, it's so great to rip through a mix like nobody's business.
I've got a modular setup that's fairly modest. It's got a couple Buchla-like oscillators.
Oh yeah, the Verbose.
The Verbose.
That was
that's
good. That's a good one.
And then the make noise stuff, the Woggle Bug, which is sort of like a fluctuating voltage circuit.
I like that Sea Devils filter you have.
Sea Devils
guys in that
filter's very nice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the stuff that I play around with on the synth side. A lot of the stuff that we put down outside of the synth stuff, guitars, if we do it or something, we usually treat them through a lot of effects.
Yeah. We have honest to God, 5 tape echoes sitting here.
That echo
Oh, no
Plex
shit.
is pretty great. It's an Italian pedal.
Oh yeah, that's just a pedal. But I mean, the pedal's up there. Yeah, the Echo Sex. But I mean, I've got a Space Echo, an Echoplex, a WEM Copycat. That's a Dynacord German tube
Oh,
tape
jeez.
delay. I love tape delays, obviously. I love that. Again mentioning that Behringer, but I love that 2600 clone. It's awesome. Anytime you put it on, you're just like, oh, that's great. I don't know. What else do we like? What else is going on?
We just put the whole stack here together, which is kind of nice. You could.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Juno, by the way, that I got from Sean. That's pretty damned awesome. I also like a Sequential Circuits Max, which was basically meant to be it's like 2 octaves or 3 octave keyboard. It was this thing that they put out right in the 80s, and things were sort of changing, like analog synths were about to go out, like the DX7 was about to come out and all that. So this thing was supposed to be, it was a keyboard that you could plug in the Commodore 64. It had a thing that interfaced with it. But anyway, it's so funny because I saw a guy on Instagram the other day using it, an English musician who's a pretty good dude. He's got some good records out. And I noticed he had it, and I said, oh, I love that thing. He's like, yeah, it's basically got Prophet sounds in it. It's because it's the same company. And he's right. It's like a way to have Prophet 5 sounds in a little synth that'll cost you I don't know, probably now it's $600, but at the time it cost me literally $150. Because it was just thought of as oh, that's just the thing. It's yeah, dude, Sequential Circuits, same company that made the Prophet. It's also, it sounds like you get Prophet sounds, which is fun. I don't know. There's no other 2 ways about it. But I like mono synths too. We have a lot of mono synths, but which ones I like?
I like we both have a Nord just for kind of compositional.
Oh yeah,
things.
for electric pianos especially.
Their sample library is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and they update it fairly regularly. You can get some Chamberlain strings sounds out of it.
No, we did sell our Wurlitzer and Fender Rhodes because the Nord does that good of a electric piano.
Wow.
Yeah, we had both. It was for space. But we had a Whirly and we had a Rhodes, but it was I don't know, you play that. We have the Stage 3 in here, which is you play that and you're God damn, it's hard to tell if there's any difference at all. Plus, if you throw it through a guitar amp, it's throw it through that Fender, it's forget it.
Now, did you see Sean found out he still had a Nord rack and posted on Instagram? He didn't even know he had it.
I didn't know he even had that, of course, which is surprising. I'll have to check that out when I go over there next time. Is that a virtual analog? Is that what they call that?
I think it is a virtual analog. I didn't even know they made a rack unit like that. And he's like, I brushed the dust off it. It still works.
Yeah.
Wow, it'd be nice to find that.
He sent me home with an old Emu thing that I never saw, a standalone Emu thing, but because it needs to be updated via this USB, but it needs a Windows 95 computer, which I have. A laptop just for old synths like that. So, yeah, but I mean, I didn't have any idea he had that Nord. I've been chuckling about all his posts about this thing is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and next week he's taking us through his museum on stream.
Wow.
Which I am stoked. Just the pictures of stuff and the stories. Oh my gosh.
Seriously.
And that's
the same way for me. I mean, when I would go over there, it was I would just in awe. Just in awe. He's got everything. He's got a neutron biphase with the actual pedal. He got that off of Country View too, by the way.
He's a country dude.
He actually, there was a guy had a Mutron, like, I swear to God, like an 808. He was a country guy.
Interesting.
He was doing like a one-man band
That's
kind
awesome.
of thing. And
Why did he break up?
And he came into, well, he got mad at himself. He came into Sean, where, you know, where Sean was working. Wow. It was like, I'm getting rid of these things. And so Sean got like, you know, he'll tell you the story. You should ask him some of how he got some of these things, because some of the stories are hilarious. Somebody's like, someone's mad at their boyfriend, so they came and they brought all their equipment to him. You know?
Yeah, I know there was one, the guy he was a country player and wanted a pedal steel and didn't have the money for it, but had this other music gear he didn't want, and he bought it from this guy so he could go buy a pedal steel guitar.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes.
And so,
yeah,
and that's...
days. I mean, that was a good time to be working in a music store.
Oh, yeah.
Because he, you know, all these dudes coming in, and there was like, this is before any kind of vintage, especially things like synths and drum machines. Drum machines, people are like, what would you ever...
could have bought all kinds of stuff back 20, 30 years, 30 years ago for sure, for a tenth of what they're worth.
Yeah.
Some of them maybe a 50th of what they're going for.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, well, it's also like, you realize anything like sequential circuits, anything mode. Think about how, you know, people, you buy that now, it's like anything with those names on it are automatically, people are like, this is yeah, like you used to be able to give away that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know, but.
Well, I was gonna say, I know, like, I was shocked he's got a CS50. I thought it was an 80, and he's like, no, you know, you bumped that wrong, and it was all screwed up, and it was 200 and some odd pounds. For the hell of it, I went and looked up how much a CS50 cost after he showed me the picture.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I think it was like $8,000 for a working one, I think, is what I saw somewhere. I was like, God, the dude's got a load just sitting on the shelf.
That's the third one down. So you've got the 80, the 60, and the 50. And the 50 is the third one down. So it has, you know, to be fair, less of everything, right? No, it's still amazing. But it's like, that's still getting $7,000, $8,000.
Yeah,
and it's looking at stuff, and man, I got gear. I'm looking back, I'm like, son of a bitch.
You know what? I don't even do that anymore, because it's like, I make myself crazy with that stuff. Because I've also realized, the thing is, like, not to be Pollyannish about it, but it's like, I also think about the stuff I got for 200, 100.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, I feel like, again, I've made, it's equilibrium. It's like, eventually when you put them all together, I've done pretty good. That I'm not going to complain, because there's absolutely stuff I've literally given away. So.
Yeah, like guitar sold for 200s, 8,000 now. I was like,
for sure.
Fuck.
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget that one time. So Sean and I have been trading stuff for years, and one time back in the 90s, I traded him I had a Melody Maker guitar, which was a Gibson one pickup thing. Joan Jett played it, I think, back in the day. But I bought it for $50 in college, one pickup kind of thing. I traded it to him, and he traded me this SG, which was an early SG.
Right.
I called it the Love Guitar because it was red and white. Oh, yeah, white pickups. Anyway, I'll never forget when I called him up one day, because I went to restring it, and when I took the strings, loosened the strings off, the headstock fell off.
What?
It just fell off. I've never seen a headstock fall off. It just fell off. I didn't touch it. I just was loosening the string, and then I was like undoing it, and all of a sudden it just went and just fell off.
I've never even heard of that one.
No, I know. Both Sean and I are so mad, because we're like, that guitar was so great looking. Wow, God damn, the defect of it was like, it's so great looking.
Oh.
That's just my funny story of things that go weird.
You want to hear a bad one about a nice piece of gear? Years ago, when my grandparents passed away, we had to go through their house.
Right.
An original Moog up in their attic, the original V.
Whoa.
They let it sit up there for decades. It was trashed. It was ruined. I almost had a funeral for it. Yeah, I mean, that was hard, because, I mean, here it is, and there was nothing to it. It could see everything was corroded and got rust on it and stuff. I was like, oh.
Oh. You want to cry.
Yeah, like I said, I almost had a funeral. I got some. I used them just for decoration now. I got some we found some like 1910, 1920s stereo microphones from the radio
nice.
stations, and there's nothing left in them. It's just cases, and they look cool.
Sure.
So, but yeah,
That stuff looks good. That's how I am about tape machines. I have tape machines that don't work at all, but I'm like, look how cool they look. They
Yeah.
do. I mean, there's just no. Some shit just looks cool. Doesn't matter if it works or not.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what's your guys' recording process? I know you guys do a lot of hardware recording.
A lot. But I mean, as he said though, too, we're not very precious because we have families and crap, and also work and all that other shit. So we have to do stuff, especially he has to do stuff in his attic, and so it's not like you're super precious or I'm precious about how you're getting it to me. Sometimes you have some decent stuff, and you've got decent equipment, I would say.
We have a bunch of drum machines. I'll usually start with something like that, like a CR68.
Yeah.
Got an old Pro One CR68. I've got but I've got some other samples and things.
But that's a Behringer 808, not a real one.
Yeah,
but it sounds great.
We'll start that way. It's usually
Frequently
some melodies, and then we'll start layering the keys and some other things, or
sometimes just the sound of a keyboard will absolutely be enough.
It'll move it to where we think it needs to go.
Yeah. We're not. I think at this point we have no set way, but we're also like a sound is enough to get started.
Yeah,
I think usually.
And you know what I liked, especially listening to your album, you guys focus on the textures and the art of the music, not the melody that's got a huge hook that everybody's not going to be able to get out of their head, and you're going to end up wanting to stab yourself in the ear. You guys actually work at the art and texture. How much layering do you do for those textures? Because some of that stuff, sitting here listening to it, it's just, oh my gosh.
I mean, to the point where we generally, or at least I generally, don't remember which synthesizers they were.
I gotta be honest, too. I mean, a lot of times these songs end up going in a direction to satisfy sort of a feel or a sort of what we have in our heads, and sometimes at the sacrifice of a melody. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that ends up on the clipping floor, for lack of a better word, in these tracks. I mean, Kevin's not just throwing all 80 tracks of keyboards up and mixing them, and a lot of stuff gets cut because it's got to be in service of where the song's heading.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's things that are maybe more melodic.
Yeah. Well, I also don't think. I mean, I'm not trying to say it for anyone else. This is just for us. But like, I don't think that we don't really do that sound design kind of thing. As the way that word is thought of these days. I mean, I just feel with us, it's like, I don't think we ever stop and go, okay, this has to be some sound. I think we just, it's hard to describe this stuff, damn it. I'm just trying to think about, but we get on, basically it just has to excite our ear in some way. And like I said, a couple of those synth songs that we got on this record still excite me. I'm like, god damn. That, like, I just remember talking to you that one day where I was like, remember we talked, was like, these synth sound really good. Like, there's a lot of good synth sounds on this record. And he was like, and Chris was like, yeah, I'm kind of noticing that too. I was like, I don't know. It was like, we were fairly, at the risk of being arrogant sound, we were fairly proud of a lot of that sound. We thought,
well, because we know a lot of stuff didn't sound good.
No, for sure.
And it died,
for sure.
And it was removed,
Well, and also too, like, compared to relative contemporaries, it's like there's a certain genre of synth music now. A certain genre, I should say, a lot of genres, but there's a certain sort of synth sound. It's kind of like by numbers. You get like this guy's like, well, this sounds like the Stranger Things thing, and this sounds like like none of that interests us at all. No. And it's like we're just, trying.
I would say there's maybe a lot more cinematic cues.
Yeah.
Things like giallo movies,
for sure.
Or, old spaghetti western.
Oh yeah, a lot of Italian music
stuff. That might inform maybe where we're heading in the song more than like, oh my god, I want it to sound like,
Well, shit, more than John Carpenter soundtracks.
Right.
Which I love, but like everyone rips the shit out of John Carpenter soundtracks. I mean, they did it back in the 80s, honestly. Like after like the thing in Halloween, well, the thing with Morricone, but after Halloween and those things, it's like you heard like the and like it's like I feel bad. I feel like he's been like really ripped off in both movies and in music. It's like I hope he's been paid a lot because it's like boy, people really ripped him off, but it's like I think we actively try to avoid that. Like, I mean, if we got the song, we've had songs where it's just like, sorry, that sounds too much like a Carpenter thing,
Right.
or you know, another band of today trying to rip off Carpenter, or Tangerine Dream.
Right.
It's like, or crap. We love those people, but it's like, well, I have no desire to hear somebody else do goddamn Tangerine Dream, much less us. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm on Tangerine Dream, I'll put it on.
Well, see, and that's my thing. I enjoy listening to stuff, but I look at more, I guess, from the work standpoint as a musician. How did they do this, and how does that theory work? Not so I can take the sound, but the actual theory. They're doing this.
Oh no, I agree. I still read music magazines for that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still interested in that.
I mean, it's interesting because that first band that I played in with Kevin, Witch Hazel, I was in my early 20s, but that was my first real studio experience. I'd been to studios to record demos and all that, but actually seeing how a record is layered and arranged and produced and why certain decisions are made, that was really eye-opening. You know, just to sort of separate but related to what we're talking to. And I think sort of that whole process, when you just get somebody with a laptop in their bedroom, I'm not saying I have a large advantage because I saw one record get made or, you know, two records get made. But I think there is a certain desire when you just got this laptop and all these cool sounds. Oh, this sounds like such and such, and just to go with it.
And it's not even a value judgment. That sounds like
it's just I don't want to.
It sounds like a value judgment, but it's really not. It's just sort of like
I just don't want to do.
It's
that.
almost not. It's not anything that they're doing wrong, and it's not their fault. It's just like at our point in our life, we're just not interested in that.
Right.
And but I think, you know, like both things are okay, right? I think.
Yeah. I think the big eye opener, like you said, going into studio, a lot of these, and I don't. When I use the term bedroom producer, a lot of people think it's a bad term. I look at it. No, it's someone that's the only space they got. They don't have access to a studio. That's what one is to me, not a derogatory term. I think it is an eye opener. First time they get behind a studio or a project studio, and they're like, "Holy shit!" You know. I mean, like my wife. Oh my gosh, my wife wouldn't date me. It took me a year to get her to date me because I was a musician and had an 18-inch hot pink mohawk. And I mean, she didn't even realize it. And she's like, yeah, my husband's a musician. He does music. She didn't see what it took until a single I released a couple years ago. She got mad at me for replaying the song on the radio, and it's like, it's one of mine. Blew her mind because she'd go in there in the studio and talk to me and then be back out. It wasn't, she's like, oh, you're doing your thing.
Right.
But finally, even showing my wife, who doesn't do anything with music, she was mind blown. She's like, you guys actually do a lot. And it's like, yeah, that's why you see me press the same two buttons for an hour straight.
Oh, yeah.
So I think when they get into a studio, it's a whole different eye opening. And I know, like myself, when I first got into it, it was like, okay, I need to rethink how I'm doing stuff in the process to get into.
Like the approach, it was the first time I'd seen vocals double.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
Yeah.
It's weird. All these other bands, it's like the guy, dude's in there in the ISO
Yeah.
booth, he's singing guitar, drums,
Yeah.
bass. Oh, let's put some effects in here on the. Okay, it's done. It's like just the conscious decision of how you approach the vocals, and you're going to double them, and then we're going to sync the lesser of the good one under to support it. It just was really eye opening.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I always say too, it reminds me of like what Eno said stuff, but it's like there's in the studio and then there's record making, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we've always been, I think both of us, interested in record making.
Well, and I think to your point, I mean, you basically, most of your adult life has been in service of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm interested in.
Reading manuals.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
it's the thing I'm interested in. And it's like, and I also, but I mean, you know, we were talking earlier, we both said that we were all kind of like, well, we've had enough probably of touring, playing live. And that's true, but it's like, but for some people, that's that's the main line.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that they still get, and it's like, well, yeah, but for me, that's making records. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's as if you say, it's like, that's great, we've got a rhythm track, but this is not enough, people.
Right.
What else can we do? And it's like,
Right.
and there's such, as we were talking about with all this gear and stuff, and it's like, it's trying to make this goddamn gear be in service of that,
Right.
Mhm.
not you be in service of the gear, which is always, it sounds like a flippant thing, but that, I'm sure you would agree, that shit can be hard.
Yeah.
That equipment can be your guide, and you're like, no, wait, you're supposed to be in service of what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So, but that's, I mean, I'm with you as far as that thing of like, I still read sound on sound. I want to know about how people make records, because it's just like, I don't know, cheese making or something, or woodworking,
I
or
love cheese.
I do love cheese. But like, woodworkers, like, I know woodworking people is like, they want nothing more than to watch another guy. What's your workshop like? How do you build this? And you're like, are you serious? But then I'm like, oh shit, that's the same way I am. I'm fascinated by my own quote unquote profession, and I'm fascinated by how everybody else does it. Because not just for the obvious thing of like, oh, I'm going to steal that, but just like, which we absolutely will. But just like the thought of like, I'm interested. I was thinking about this today. It's like, when you're interested in your profession, people think you're nuts. I mean, but you're right. But it's like, well, we are nuts. Like, I'm not interested in the woodworker guy and his thing, but those woodworkers are absolutely fascinated by it. Like, my brother can tell you, like, where a piece of furniture was made in the 1700s.
Oh, wow.
But I'm like, oh, I have my own weird shit. I can tell you where a record was made and who made it in the 60s Memphis. I actually can, by listening to it, tell you where it was made. And I'm like, I like that kind of stuff. Like, where you're like a whack job. Like, you're so into something, you're utterly boring to anyone if you're talking about this. Only another person wants to hear about this shit.
Yeah,
So,
like random stuff. Like you guys were talking about Get Back. I don't know if they discussed in there the line. I can't remember the name of the song off the top of my head, but where he says, "Mother Mary comes to me."
right.
Everybody thinks that's a religious song.
Right.
It's not. It's dedicated to his mother, who died when he was a child, whose name was Mary, and that blows a lot of people's minds. They're like, it's like, no, it's a dedication to his mom. It's nothing to do with religion at all.
That's another thing that's great about music, though, right? Like, it's like, in a lot of ways, especially lyrical music, are like, well, here's the lyrics, but it's like, yeah, but even it doesn't matter what you wrote it about or what you are singing about. That is, in a lot of ways, an empty vessel for people to pour in whatever thing they want
Once
to
you
pour
release
into
it, it's not yours really.
That's
Yeah.
true. I agree. It's like you
Not to be
but
silly about it.
it's also why it's like, I very much am also the kind of person who will analyze stuff, but it's very much like, whatever you take from it is whatever you take from it. I'm sure Paul McCartney had probably no problem with all these people thinking it was.
Oh no, of course not. It's just it was interesting. Like I like finding the behind the scenes stuff. Like
Oh,
Carmen Electra. Remember, Carmen Electra was one of Prince's backup singers,
Yes,
and they were in a
yes.
relationship, and they lost the baby, and it kind of just tore them apart. And I know crazy stuff like that. You know,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff Beck takes so long to put out albums because he's a perfectionist and he'll throw everything away and start over. I mean, just stuff nobody really wants to know.
Oh, except me. I love
Yeah.
that stuff. But I also, as much as I just talk about people who wank the guitar, I love Jeff Beck, and he blows my
Beck's
mind.
great.
He
Yeah.
blows my mind.
I
What he
actually,
does with the pot is amazing.
well, I will tell you, I turned down meeting Steve Vai to go fishing with my family.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and you know what? Honest to goodness, I don't regret it. Got sunburnt, didn't catch squat, but you know, there's. It's like, yeah, I should have, but it's like, nah, I enjoy the time with my family. So, I
Like
mean,
that guy said, it's called fishing, not catching.
yeah. Well, yeah, one of my secret addictions that kills my wife is I like watching people paint fishing lures. I'll watch them hand make these fishing lures. They're like $600, and it's
yeah.
like, holy
Well,
hell!
our friend, the guy who was in a band with him and was a partner in the studio that I had, his dad used to make lures for fly fishermen, and like he had famous people use his lures
Right.
that he would. So yeah, we know about like, but that's the same idea. Like it's absolutely the same idea.
Yeah.
It's like there's no difference between a lure and me waxing rhapsodic over a tape delay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing different about that. I mean, it's the same. It's like I said, you're so into stuff that you're basically a whack job.
Yeah, I talked to my wife to put her to sleep. It'd be like, all right, honey, she's like, I can't sleep. And it's like, all right, I'll start talking to you about music or pot. And she's on there. I talk to her every morning. She has to get up at 3 a.m. I get up with her and talk to her on the phone the whole way at work. And she'll sit there. She's like, I'm falling asleep. Shut up and talk about something else. She's like, you cannot talk about music or pot to me the first thing in the morning. You're going to put me right back to sleep.
My wife is always. I've been married a long time too. So basically, I've basically known her since I've been a musician. She's wives can be pretty great in the sense of like, fine, whatever, fine, just don't talk to me too much about it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, that's good.
Yeah, or don't tell me how much it costs, and then they find out how much it costs, and they're mad. You told me not to tell you.
I apologize to her on a constant loop.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's
Yeah. And she's like, "Why are we paying this on the credit card?"
But you know, he made a good point though, and the one thing that is true is like, which is also why I don't buy computer stuff. But the main thing is true. And I told my wife this, and he's right, and Chris is right to point this out. This stuff in here basically holds its value. In fact, increases probably most likely.
Yeah.
And I tell her, look, if I was into like beer and NASCAR, like that ain't. There's no money being spent on that's down the tubes, right? I mean, I'm pardon the pun. Down the. Right.
Well, to an extent, I know someone who is a beer dealer, and you would not believe there's bottles of beer out there that are almost $2,000.
Oh my god.
And you know what? They look like they're in Scotch bottles, and you drink them in like Scotch glasses. They're not the beer we know at all. That you don't drink it cold, nothing. I mean, it's interesting stuff. I've had a glass of it, and I couldn't believe I was drinking a $600 beer. And I mean, they're like in wine glasses, so there's some beer out there that goes up. But people don't know about that unless they know microbreweries real well.
Oh, that's right. But it's like, but I mean, at least if you're gonna dump your money into something that if I have to sell all this shit for some horrible reason, knock on wood, I could. So
yeah, and it's like the VSTs. There's nothing wrong with VSTs. There's nothing wrong with working in the box. I've lost thousands of dollars over the years with computer upgrades, computer changes, outdated software, and it was to the point. It's like like I looked at my wife and I was like, I've lost VSTs over and over again. I'm working on my ballet. I'm working on this reorchestration. I was like, I need something that's going to do it for me. And she's like, I don't want to know how much, if it's truly going to work, and get rid of some of the other gear that's everywhere, go for it. I was like, okay, I freed up a bunch of room.
there is absolutely things that are lost forever that I lost forever. I mean, we're doing this on an old iMac still. I'm running Pro Tools like 11.
Yeah, I won't upgrade. I'm on 11, and it's like
we're never gonna upgrade.
I mean, I literally the last time I bought a plug-in.
Remember the last time you had to do it?
Well, it went from it was when the 32 to 64-bit thing happened. So who knows when that was? I don't know. But it literally was so dumb. Is I had to upgrade Pro Tools and then like 5 operating systems on Mac just to have the stupid soft tube plug-in.
I remember when he was calling me. He's like, "You want to know the metal thing?" I'm like, "What? No, don't tell me. There's more."
Literally, the one I couldn't even download. They had to send me a disc for the OS because it was an old system. It was like 2011. And
but not like old.
6 years ago.
Yeah, so it was like at the time it was what 6 years old.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, it's obsolete. What? It's not like I got a Model T here or something.
Yeah, that's. Some of the software, like, I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of them people don't know, like SampleTake, Samplitude, and Philharmonic. You get 3 downloads of that. Your computer crashes, that's it. You got to rebuy the program, and that was the final point for me, because I used the pipe organs and stuff out there. I was like, I'm not dropping this money again. I should be able to download it more than 3 times if I bought the fucking software.
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
So,
it's like not even. I'm even thinking of but you bought whatever. I mean, it's like it's not like I can't use this purple audio thing. Oh, so too bad, dude. Too late. Can't use that anymore. Like,
mm,
it's hardware. It's never going to. And if it breaks, knock on wood, you can fix it.
mhm.
It's like, hello.
Or
can
you at
actually
least got warranty. If you can't do it, you got a warranty. Send that shit back.
But it's like that's the other nice thing about this stuff too. It's like we know, thankfully, knock on wood, a few people too. We know a little bit ourselves, but we also know people where it's like, unless it's super complicated, most of this shit can be fixed.
Yeah.
And there's just something nice about that.
And that is the one, like, I got my Iridium. I have such issues with FedEx. Had my Iridium 4 hours. Apparently, FedEx crushed it in shipping. I had the lower left part of the screen suddenly started going out, and all the knobs on oscillator 1 just suddenly stopped working. It worked for 4 hours, brand new out of the box. Pandemic, it took me 8 months to get it back. So, Waldorf and it just ended up completely replacing it because of the hassle I went through. But yeah, it's never trust FedEx. But yeah, I mean,
Or UPS or any of them. Yeah.
I'll take UPS, but I mean, I could still get it fixed. If I would have dropped several $100s on a VST and it totally wrecked, glitched out, I've had some. I paid for them. They worked for 6 months, and I never got them to work correctly again, even with tech support. I can email, and that's what I think a lot of the younger people don't realize. This stuff can be repaired, and you get good gear. You don't have to buy the newest thing that comes out every few months. So
Absolutely not. Right. I mean, and it's funny too because I do think that the younger people, pardon the expression, rather, the younger people, I think they're really coming around to a lot of the stuff because the prices reflect some of this stuff, right? Like, like this, like I'm looking at this, Eventide 3000 that I bought, and I remember, I mean, not even the 90s, like I would say 5 to 8 years ago, those were you could get one for $700, $800. They're now like $2,800.
Oh.
Because and it's funny because Eventide has come out with plugins of that, and yet the price of the actual unit keeps going up, which should tell Eventide what's happening is that people are listening to that and then actually hearing the real thing, and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So there's that too, which is just like I think they're being turned on to like this hardware stuff is different and in some cases better.
Yeah, and clarify the term younger because as things have changed, people are getting into music at different ages. By younger, I mean people new to it. I mean, there's guys around here. There's dads gone mad. All these guys are like 60 in a hard rock cover band, and they, you know what? They were just drinking buddies and decided we're starting a band one day. And I mean, one of them played guitar. The rest for years. The rest of them had no idea what they were doing, and they started a band. So, by young, there's people who are just getting into it. Like, gosh, what was the famous actor? He was like, what, 80 and released a heavy metal album.
What was it, Pat Boone or whatever? Was that the guy? Pat Boone?
He played the wizard in, I can't remember if it's Lord of the Rings, I think, or Harry Potter. But I can't remember his name. But he was like 80 and released a death metal album. I mean, it's like...
Really? I'm not sure who you mean. I know. Is it Ian McKellen? Was that Candle? Or was that... I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't. He did all kinds of stuff. He was a great actor, but yeah, he did that shortly before he died, and it was like, holy crap, man, he's throwing down. Yeah, I mean, there's a death metal band. Their lead singer is a 72, 73-year-old lady.
Oh my.
Oh yeah. They call it granny metal. And they went on like America's Got Talent, and they're like, "Oh, this old sweet lady," and I mean, here she's. So, there's when I say young people, I mean people new to music.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah. You get to around our age, and you're like, "Damn, young people." So we'll clarify the music there.
By the way, though, young people, anyone should listen to them.
Dead people? We don't care.
So, you guys got any new music coming out? Are you guys planning any new releases, or are you just
Yeah, we're mixing now a new release that I don't know when to say it's gonna come because I don't know things. But anyway, it'll be another cassette at least initially. Maybe there may be other formats later, but it'll be another cassette. It's coming out on an Italian label called NOIA, which is actually quite a long time electronic label in Italy. So it'll be a different thing. It's much more, not much more, but there's more what would be called
More
songs.
song oriented.
Yeah, a little more song oriented than 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 again a pure soundtrack, which is what that Crying of Lot 49 was. So this is more of a there are more what I would call song things. It's kind of it's kind of like in a sense it's kind of like what I call a mixtape, in the sense that it's songs from a whole bunch of different projects, because we actually have a whole ridiculous concept of that we not just a concept album, we have like a concept like overarching, like a concept, I call it a concept career. But so this actual release is gonna like have several songs from different projects that are eventually come out, so it's kind of like a mixtape in that sense. But anyway, yes, that's being mixed right now. Hopefully will be coming out, I don't know,
Springtime.
a few months. Yeah, springtime. Obviously check our Instagram, and that stuff. We tend to update it then. But that's the most and then they'll also have we're also planning on doing it depends on the vinyl shortage thing here, or the vinyl backlog. But we are planning on doing a split 7-inch too with the Swedish band Orange Crate Art, who we've done a remix for, and we really like. So that'll be a split 7-inch. I just don't know. It's going to be totally based on how fast it can be pressed, and by the way they're talking now, it may be, honest to God, like summer before it can get pressed. So those are the immediate things that are coming. So yeah, but we have a lot of material though. We really need to get
well,
more.
once that releases, we'll have to get you guys back, and you can share about the process. I'm stoked about it. I will tell you, I've been listening Crying a Lot 49 so dang much, and it's just a great album. Just to if you guys haven't listened to it, yeah, I'll drop your links to Bandcamp, anywhere else you got,
Yeah,
and when
we
this is
they can listen to it all on Bandcamp too. I mean, they don't, you listen to it and decide before if you want to buy it or not buy it. It's fine. You can listen on Bandcamp.
Yeah, and it's only $6 if you're going to complain about buying music, which so many people do. It's $6. Okay, it's not $40 for.
I actually think too there might be a Bandcamp Friday coming up too. So and I think it's it starts or I think it's the first week of February. But again, we'll put it on our Instagram stuff. So yeah, so check it out. You might want to buy it, and then Bandcamp Friday comes along, you can buy it, and then we actually get all the money. Bandcamp doesn't. Nobody does it. Only the artist gets it on Bandcamp. So that's a nice way too. If you decide you like it, you can genuinely get $6 into our grubby little band, which will all go towards more gear. It's like a terrible cycle.
It could be worse. It could be Spotify, where you get 1/100th of a cent per song play.
Right.
Okay.
We're not on Spotify, and we have no
It's
intention
funny
to.
because one of my old bands is on Spotify, and I thought it would be really remarkable if I took a stand and removed the Celebrity Pilot catalog. I mean, I think I could take the whole
system could
system
fold,
down,
dude.
man.
Come on, think about what you're doing.
I know what you're referring to, and I have a feeling someone else's finances, not Spotify, is going to hurt a lot worse. Now, I have a
No,
question.
we very much appreciate you listening and saying kind words about it, and hopefully other people enjoy it. And yeah, we'd love to come back and talk more about it. We love talking about ourselves. So
Okay, and I will say, guys, I can listen to music. I do it from, as you guys can. You can listen to music and not like it, but you listen to it because you're a musician and just how you do things. I truly do like listening to your guys' album. It's not just listening to it to listen to it. I actually enjoy listening
Thank you
to
very
it.
much. Very
So,
kind.
no problem. Now,
Very gratifying to actually have people say something like that. In this day and age, you can barely get them to pay any attention. People being, general public. So it's
yeah,
very gratifying when people say things like that. We appreciate it.
well, it is very good. Now, I like to close out with some funny stories.
Okay.
Rode in the studio, and Sean says, yeah, Sean said you guys got plenty of them, and probably most of them involve him with you guys too.
Is there anything like sort of funny studio stories mainly? Or?
And studio touring, show stories.
I don't have a ton of, and it wouldn't have been when I played with you.
No, that's all right. No,
But
feel free.
No, just in general, any out of your career and over the years.
We played a show when I was playing with Doug Gillard with Alex Chilton, and he was notoriously, kind of ill-tempered and
Yeah, has a very much reputation as a grump.
yeah. So we went back, we opened for them, and I actually talked to him for a little bit and I really wanted to get an autograph from my friend Eric, who's a huge Chilton Big Star fan. And I didn't talk about Big Star, and by this point, this is like 15 years ago, and Chilton, he was playing standards like Volare
Yeah,
and
a
stuff.
lot
It was
of that
very
kind of stuff,
strange. But anyways,
I remember because all my friends would email me and go, "I saw Alex Chilton. He really sucked, man." Like, well, he just doesn't want to play Big Star.
I remember like we were getting ready to pack out, and I was leaving, and he's like, "Hey," and I turned around and he goes, "By the way, I liked a couple of the things you played on guitar tonight." And I was like, "That was awesome."
Wow.
But then I was like, it was like the old Joe Green like commercial with the me Joe Green with,
Right.
with the Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Hey kid,
Hey,
and
kid.
he throws his jersey.
Yeah.
That was like
that was Alex Chilton throwing you his jersey.
He basically said he's handing the torch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
That's not really funny. I just thought it was a kind of a.
It's a cool story. I like sharing that because so many people think the sex, drugs, rock and roll view, and they don't get to see the real side of it, and that's not what it's like being a musician in reality.
Well, no, we've mentioned before about playing that gig with the Flaming Lips, and it was in a club. It was a club in New York, and it was honest to God, what 200 max. That was the whole point of this show. It was kind of a secret show. And like I said, there was like 4 bands before. But anyway, I ended up just like this was right around the time that they had done She Don't Use Jelly. It was that big MTV kind of hit. So they were like going
Ascension,
yeah, and he was, but like I just remember I just said hello to Wayne, kind of like I just wanted to introduce myself. 45 minutes later, I'm still standing there while he's talking. Like, I had no idea that Wayne, and subsequently, we met them one other time. Like, Wayne Coyne will talk to you and not stop for, like, I had no idea. I expected these sort of reticent, hey, nice kid, thanks, kid, real good, thanks. And I kept saying to him, I remember a couple times, I was like, you probably need to go, right? Like I expected him to be like, I'm just a schmuck, why isn't he blowing me up? But he's just talking about, like, everything. I just remember he was just a super talker, and it was just such an interesting experience because I was just like, I'm talking to Wayne Coyne and he won't shut up. I'm like, which is fine, but I'm also like, I didn't expect to see this. This is very interesting.
And that is cool when you get to talk to people. I've had that experience too. You're like, okay, I'm opening for them, I'm playing with them, I'm just gonna go say hi and introduce myself, and then you're backstage almost the whole time talking about shit and like what you did with your ADHD when you were a kid, and you're all sharing ADHD stories and stuff.
I know, and it's like, it's funny too because I bet you felt the same way. You're kind of like, I have imposter syndrome, right? Because you're like, what am I doing?
Right.
Like, I'm a schmuck. Like, are you treating me as an equal?
Right.
This is like, Alex Chilton didn't treat you as an equal, of course. But I'm like, and Wayne Coyne's not treating. But he kind of did. And like at one point, we like went over to the guitar rack. And we're like talking about guitars, and I'm like, holy shit, he's like treating me as like not just a schmuck. He's like treating me sort of like, hey, fellow musician. I wanted to go. Actually, I'm not a musician at all. You shouldn't even be talking to me at all right now.
Yeah.
I don't even know how bad this is.
You kind of get like a little kid.
Then we kind of, that's the kind of thing though, like, you remember how, like, we were not what you would call a dynamic live group, but so many people would come up afterwards and be like, you guys got something. It's hard, it's like, you just have a thing, it's weird. And we would go, do we?
No.
Okay. And I think it was partly because, I think, we would play, that was like New York, and then we'd play Chicago. But I think part of it was just we were just schmucks from Ohio. So we were kind of just like, hi, we're some schmucks from Ohio. And I think people sort of projected this thing of like, oh, aren't they adorable? Look at them coming out to the big city and doing the show. Isn't that sweet?
Now, I do have a question. What the hell are they putting in the water up there? Because all these good and great musicians, you guys are just pouring out of freaking Ohio. I mean, what is in the water up there?
We have a joke in all seriousness that everyone is from Ohio because there's also like a ton of actors and actresses. And you read a bio, like my wife and I have a running joke. She's like, "Oh, here's another one," and I mean going back to Paul Newman, but also like today, like young people, young actors and stuff coming up, young musicians, and it's like, "Oh, here's another one from Ohio, from Ohio." It's like, I don't know, we have like 5 presidents too, like or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
I think it's because there's nothing to do in Ohio. So you become like an artist or a politician and get the hell out of Ohio?
They don't stay.
They don't stay generally. No. I mean, technically, I'm from Chicago. But I've lived here for, let's not kid ourselves, most of my life. But I don't know what it is about Ohio. It ain't certainly nothing good.
I don't know,
think
because
so.
Well,
there's
the
even...
story was that Devo, was from Akron,
Yeah.
and they are from Akron. But the story was that they were asked by a British newspaper what Akron was like, and they said, well, it's a lot like Liverpool, like one of them to sail or one of them to set off the top of his head. And then all of a sudden there was a huge scene in Northeast Ohio in the 70s for post-punk and all that stuff. So
I mean, we're Devo adjacent. We know some people who were like around then and knew them. But I mean, there's a lot of Ohio. I mean, Guided by Voices.
Right.
I mean,
Black Keys.
Like we know bands who the Black Keys were opening for when they were nobodies. Like we have a good friend who was going to be their bass player, but he decided to skip one rehearsal, and so they decided to just be two piece. Like that's not just like that's not some drunken like I could have been the bass player.
No,
like we know that. Like
no, we want you to come over and play bass.
I mean literally, that story is not bullshit. Like they don't have a bass player because our friend didn't show up for their rehearsal, and so they literally became a two piece. It's like the Black Keys are a two piece because of my friend, our friend. He's your friend too. But yeah, there is something about Ohio, but I think it's mainly just you're bored shitless, so you've got to figure something out.
Oh, that's crazy. Now, before we close out, I like to, for anybody, your career musicians, people who've paid their dues, any advice you guys can give to people wanting to make music at some point, whether it's as a musician, an engineer, any advice you can get anybody wanting to make a career in the music industry?
Well, don't listen to your family, because most likely your family's not going to be for it. So you're definitely first thing to do is not listen to your family, because they're going to invite you to be an insurance salesman or
I think just don't go to school for it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would recommend not going and sinking a bunch of money into Berkeley or any of that.
Or same goes for engineering, because we had a friend, our good friend, almost went to like Full Sail and spent like whatever this like $60,000 back then for a Full Sail, and instead he bought some ADATs and some rack gear and just started recording. Yeah. And that was a quicker, better, and more fulfilling way to learn engineering than going to some school.
I think that's a good analogy. I think if you want to be a musician or you want to work, make records, and you've got to do it. You've got to have enough confidence in yourself, and don't pay other people to teach you. I mean, from the standpoint of like schools or I just think it just is something that has to be hammered on repeatedly.
I agree.
With oscillating, supreme confidence and abject,
Also, make sure you want to do it. I think there's too much. I have to be honest. I think there's too many musicians now who are doing it for reasons that might not. The paramount reason should be because you have to. Like you can't imagine not doing it. And I feel like this has always been the case, but I feel like nowadays, especially with no money in music, there's a lot of people who are doing it because like fashionable and they want to say they're in a band, or they want to be like, I have some stuff on Spotify. It's like none of those reasons are like, you got to be either do it for real or just find something else to do, because golf, like we talked about,
Don't do that.
like don't just like it's like I just think that if you got to really find out how serious you are about it, and if you're serious, then you should be doing it all the time too. You should be like you're honest to God, your relationship should suffer. Honestly, like this, if you're making movies, if you're making music, if you're writing, like you better have relationships that are suffering. Because if you have relationships that are like really well balanced, and it's like you're not spending enough time at what you're doing. Like, I mean, you've got to have, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not to like make yourself like miserable or anything, but I'm just like, you've got to know you're going to spend the time on this. It's going to be a lot of time. You've got to have like your wife go, are you coming up? I mean, how many texts I get? Are you coming up? It's like, because I was in the studio down here all day, all night, and you coming up? It's like, oh yeah, that's right. There's other humans that I have to deal with. I forgot about that. And you're like, oh yeah, human beings. It's like Earth calls you. Oh, Earth is calling. Oh,
Yeah.
it's like that's the kind of person you. That's what you should be. You should be. You should be. It should take over you, where you just get into it, and you're like, oh my God, 4 hours have gone by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
like,
I think the other big one, don't plan on it as a career. The more you fight for it, in a sense, if that's focusing, because I do this for a living, you know, I do music, interview artists like you. I wanted to be an attorney or an architect. I'm not even remotely close. So
well, I also encourage men and women. I'm also encourage, make sure that your significant other gets what you're doing and has a much better job than you.
Yes.
That really makes things a lot easier.
Because income in the music industry is very hit and miss.
Even in the 90s when we were getting paid, right? Remember, we would get paid. Like we were, I spoke about, we talked about this before, when I spoke about when in my first band, which we got a friend of ours paid for our first 7, and from that point forward, we never paid or put out our own thing. We always, some label came and put out our stuff, right, and paid us for the privilege. So it's like you get, I mean, but that doesn't exist anymore. But you also just, like if you have that, it is feast or famine. Like I remember one time when we first got signed to this one label, they immediately gave us $10,000. But I have to admit, though, at that time I was smart enough, because I immediately went out and I bought the Neumann U87. I bought the Joby compressor. You know what I mean? I immediately put it back. I told Ben, I'm like, we're taking this money and we're not going out to party, and you're not going to spend $2,000 on a shitty, like car or something. We're putting this back into the band, right? So, but then I was like $10,000 there, and then you don't get any money for another 6 months or 8 months or whatever, right? And then I remember we got a song on the TV show. It was like, oh, Windfall, $2,500 to get this song on the TV show. Awesome. And then you're like, no money for 11 more months.
Yeah.
It's like this is no way to live. It's like the world's crappiest lottery.
Yeah. Off my own, I'm not doing work for other people in the studio. The majority of my income actually comes from licensed music for movies and commercials and video games. If you want to make money, nowadays you got to license it out. Otherwise, I mean, artists can sit on Spotify unless you're like Beyonce or Avicii or other people are making $1 million a month. About Spotify, which, dear God, I don't even know how many streams they're getting for that. But I mean, an artist has a license that you guys, a lot of people have to. Once you got to let it go some. So.
Well, I also saw too, when it comes to streaming, some number, like, honest to God, it's insane, of like the top 1% account for 99% of streams.
Something like that.
So it's like that's been the sad thing. I remember the promise of the web. Remember, was this sort of, well, it's going to actually be really good. You're going to have middle class musicians because the web's going to make it so that people, you don't have to be that super popular, be able to have enough fans to have a middle class existence. Wrong. Turns out the human beings like more popular things, and the more popular things are things that are liked. And the circle just keeps going on. So, yeah. But anyway, Stay out of the music business. What I'm saying.
And do it for fun. Don't do it going in. I'm gonna make money. You know.
Well, I mean, even if it's not like I don't mean to be over, but it's like it doesn't even have to be fun, but it just has to be something that it's what you do. You have to like it's got to be both a passion sounds lame. Passion sounds like I have a passion for goat yoga.
Right.
Like who cares?
Right.
But people use passion wrongly these days. But it has to be a thing where it's like you can't imagine your life without doing it. If you, I mean, I know many people we've had in our lives who have been talked out of, or like they just went and lived a middle class life and didn't ever really do music. Well, it's like after they were in a band with us or something. And you're like, well, they really aren't music people. Like if you're not doing it on when you get home from work or something like that, it's like then you're really not. If you got out of it, then you're just the guy who was like, it was cool. You know who I'm thinking of course. Three letters, your former band. Then you're just the guy who was in a band for chicks and booze, right, or whatever, right? You're just a dude who now plays golf. Now that I think about that dude, but it's like be into it. Like just don't waste the bandwidth, both real and not rhetorical, but theoretical bandwidth. Just don't do it then. Either do it full on or don't do it. I guess that's what I'm really trying to get.
Put your heart into it. Don't be half-assed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true though, right? Like even something shitty like golfing. Well, if you're gonna like something shitty like golfing, like be into it.
And your relationship should suffer.
It should suffer.
I played golf once, and I was like a real-life Happy Gilmore. You will never catch me doing it again. That's just that. Golf ain't my thing.
Who says golf is a good walk spoiled? I think so.
Either him or H.L. Maker.
Yeah, one of the two.
That
And
sounds.
also-
Two American humorists.
Well, George Carlin had something funny about golf too, but yes, golf is a good walk ruin.
All right. I don't want to keep you guys anymore. We are going to get you back. Anybody who is watching this on YouTube, these are filmed on Saturdays. We have different interviews every Saturday, or walkthroughs through museums such as Sean Carlin's doing next week.
Yeah, right.
Head over to, that I'm excited. Head to twitch.tv/junkiebase. It's where we do them. Otherwise, check out here. We normally put them on YouTube 24 hours after they air, and then they also get embedded in our website, junkiebasestudios.com. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you later. Have a good evening.